What, then, is the basic difference between today's computer and an intelligent being? It is that the computer can be made to see, but not to perceive. We are confronted with news of events from the world around us each day, from the newspapers we subscribe to or read via our neighbor on the train, to the newscasts we watch while drinking our morning coffee, to snippets passed along to us on our Facebook or Twitter feeds. A cacophony of news is waiting to greet us in any given moment. What we forget is how much this news is curated. Writers, editors, our friends all make decisions about what is important and how it should be presented. Social media amplifies these choices, and some stories are lost, whispers beneath all the shouting. We also often forget how disjointed and ephemeral our experience of news is. Complex stories are distilled down into digestible bits, made into understandable snapshots, which are arrayed together as blots of ink on paper, pixels on a screen. Our news is contained within the frame of our television, the edges of our newspaper, the shape of our phone, the length of our morning commute. Even with our increasingly connected world, the news is generally delivered to us as disparate, divergent, and disconnected. But humans rely on patterns of words, images, sounds, events to make meaning and understand the world around them. The vast amount of content found on the internet has helped to shape these patterns for over 20 years. However, this cascading stream of information confuses as much as it enlightens. Even a seemingly straightforward Google search has been curated and shaped by invisible forces. The patterns and complex algorithms used by the computer influence our own pattern making and perceptions. So I asked myself, how might someone depict visual complexity that replicates the informational chaos we experience as consumers of the digital world? I began this exploration into information and online search while in grad school, and have conducted research and user testing in the hopes of positing different ways of conducting search online. The interface prototypes seen here explore metaphors and the concept of information triage to help give users different visual and spatial avenues for understanding the content they find online, and to help craft different kinds of search journeys. While developing these interfaces, I created this set of visual sketches, which prompted the body of work I'm speaking about tonight. The interfaces on the previous slide suggest different kinds of visual and spatial language to promote clarity. But these sketches instead create ambiguity and abstraction. While not appropriate for the goals of information triage, like any good creator, I filed these sketches away for future use and found myself returning to them, fascinated by the patterns and visual structure. In March of 2011, I began collecting screenshots of news stories from Google. The Time Warner cable news station steadily reported news stories, implications of the Arab Spring in Egypt and Libya, the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, and more financial setbacks to the US economy. I'm still not sure why I gave in to this strange impulse. I had no design problem to solve, no sense of what could be created out of this collection, no endpoint in mind. But some internal voice urged me to start the collection regardless. And I found myself returning to those sketches from the previous slide. What if I could disrupt our typical experience of online news and offer something different that might suggest reflection and reconsideration? Soon my analytical side took over to create a systematic method for the collection. 1, collect news stories when something particularly interesting or striking was reported. 2, search using the simplest terms or words possible. 3, capture a screenshot of each of the first 20 Google search results. 4, label and organize those results. In all, I executed 9 separate searches using 17 unique queries, which generated 700 screenshots. Next, I manipulated each captured Google result to create the image tiles. A section of the original screenshot was cut out and pasted into the template shown here, and then reflected and repeated to create the final kaleidoscopic tile. Each image tile was created one by one, each layer built and manipulated individually. The process could have been automated, allowing the computer to do more of the work, but the experience of creating each of the 700 tiles enabled me to examine details closely, notice emerging patterns, and think deeply about the overall project while making it. I'm also interested in exploring the tension between work that is imperfect and textured and handcrafted, and that which is slick and precise and digital. Once I built all the image tiles, I stripped out the headline text and created separate typographic studies to accompany the images. Utilizing open source free online fonts, I wanted to confront the typical experience of news headlines, which are usually set in a sans serif typeface like Helvetica, meant to be read and understood quickly. The colors for the typographic studies were pulled directly from the image tiles, and each tile can be viewed individually or taken together in various sets. I then created 2 motion pieces and an interface to exhibit the material. I wanted to convey the beauty of accumulation and the frustration of the speed and information overload of online news. The motion pieces fire tiles and words at you quickly, images and text on separate screens, while the interface allows viewers to access each individual image tile and text headline, giving them the chance to explore and pause the stream of information as desired. A second iteration of the piece was curated into an exhibition about typography and design, and I used a 3D printer to create more physical manifestations of the typographic studies. The end result deals more with scale, layers, and perception than the first version, and attempts to convey a sense of ephemerality rather than accumulation and speed. Throughout the work, I'm also interested in how the mediation of this content, the manipulation and representation, asks viewers to look at content that is at once quotidian and exceptional in a completely different way. For this talk, I have undertaken 2 new searches to see if the results found in 2016 create tiles different from those captured in 2011. Based on current events that match up with past searches, I present to you now images from Google searches for the flooding in Baton Rouge and the presidential election. This first set shows 2 images that have much in common: a general cross shape, the green of trees. The next set is quite different from each other. The left open and elegant, the right more textured and crowded. And when we see a full array of old and new image tiles together, it's clear that web design has changed in the last 5 years. Screens that were once chock full of text and advertisements and small images are now allowed more white space and display larger typography and photographs. Here again, we see images that are similar, dark and full with squares at their centers. And then we see more differences, brighter and lighter, and evoking different overall shapes and layer effects. The full array again suggests differences in overall design, and we see the red, white, and blue we would expect from news coverage of our American election, but we also see other colors, as well as websites produced by other nations. Very different results from the same Google search. The repetition inherent in the process of making these images forces us to notice elements we would not otherwise. Social media icons, bars of color and text, the shape of a figure. The tiles also mash together elements to create new forms and shapes, which are sometimes ethereal, sometimes incomprehensible, and sometimes amusing. For instance, this last slide is built from a photograph of Donald Trump, which is blended together into this black mass, but is still flanked by the website masthead Real Clear Politics. So, very often, the perfection of an image depends on its not resembling the object as much as it might. The overarching questions that I'm attempting to explore are, what is the experience of search, and how might it be shaped in other ways? How can we reveal the poetry lurking beneath the silent algorithms, the incredibly engineered systems and structures, and the layers of user interface? What is news, and how does it relate to our conceptions of history? Furthermore, how does our definition and understanding of history change in today's networked and searchable world? Future work will include seeking new ways to arrange and display this data, conducting additional searches for more current stories and news terms, and attempting to create new spaces for meaning making. Thank you.